Hello and welcome back to the Prison Officer Podcast. Before we get to our topic today, I just want to take a minute to thank one of our sponsors. Innovation has always been the key to success of Pepperball, and the Pepperball Blast is just one more way to deliver a payload that will distract, disorient, or incapacitate an inmate. This lightweight, refillable delivery system is perfect for carrying in a holster, in your pocket, or just holding in your hand as part of a cell entry team or a CERT team. Each reloadable blast cartridge contains up to 3 projectiles worth of PAVA powder. When the quick flip safety is turned and depressed, the PAVA powder is pushed out of the tube by a 1.8 gram nitrogen cartridge. This will quickly cover the inmate and saturate the cell. Since there's no actual projectiles deployed upon firing, this is a truly non-lethal product with no impact. To learn more about Pepperball, go to www.pepperball.com or click on the show notes today for more information. Pepperball is the safer option first. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Prison Officer Podcast. My name is Mike Cantrell. Today I have the elected jailer from Nelson County, Kentucky, Justin Hall. He began his career in 2006 at the Hardin County Detention Center, which is the 5th largest jail in Kentucky. Over the years, he's worked his way up through the ranks to lieutenant, gaining invaluable experience along the way. And in 2022, he was elected as the jailer of Nelson County, officially took office in 2023, and this marks his 18th year in the field of corrections. The way I first found Justin, and we haven't talked, so this is going to be an open conversation, but I was on LinkedIn, and I got to noticing these posts from somebody who was just very passionate, who was showing a lot of the leadership things I teach in classes, and you can just tell he loves his job and he loves the people he works with. And I just wanted to talk to him and find out more and see if I can learn something from him. So welcome to the Prison Officer Podcast, Justin.
Well, thank you, Michael. I appreciate it. And, like I was telling you earlier, I'm sure I can learn something from you too with all your experience that you have as well.
I appreciate it.
Like I say, it's an honor to be on here, especially when it comes to corrections. A lot of officers and whatnot. Everything that we do is behind a door. It's behind. The general public don't get to see it as much because if there's a big arrest on somebody, that makes the news headlines, and the police department, oh, look who we caught, and whatnot. A lot of people don't realize that person has to go to jail and prison. So there's a whole other group of people that's having to make sure their constitutional needs are met, that they get to court, that they have their day in court and whatnot. So a lot of correctional officers and, of course, in our line of work, deputy jailers, a lot of times, we feel like, or can't say we feel like it, but a lot of us feel like that, it's kind of like we do a really important job that doesn't get seen by a lot of people.
It's true. It's absolutely true. And I think jails and, we all work in corrections and we know that. But from the outside, I think people have these totally different viewpoints of what going to jail is and what going to prison is.
Right.
But a lot of the jobs that we do inside are the same. Now, I spent my time in 30 years plus working in prison, and I've been learning a lot about jails in the last few years. But it is a different job. You're handling people that haven't been vetted as much. A lot of them are coming in. They're still high. They're still drunk. Mm-hmm. And so you guys have a really rough job. Tell me a little bit about Nelson County Jail.
Well, Nelson County, I'll tell you, of course, I started out at Hardin County Jail, which was the 5th largest jail, and it has 648 beds. And so I worked my way up to 3rd in command when I was there. And then my hometown's Nelson County, and I always worked in Hardin County, so that way I wouldn't deal with the people I went to school with, So after my 12th year, I came to Nelson County to work and then decided to run for office. So now I get to run into people that I know, unfortunately, when they get arrested. But we have a population of almost 50,000 people in Nelson County. Matter of fact, 90% of the world's bourbon's made here in Nelson County. Your Jim Beam, your Baker's Mark, all that stuff. Oh, there's distilleries. Matter of fact, there's a distillery walking distance from the jail where I'm at right now. And we are a small jail. I only have 102 beds here. We're looking at expanding to 400 to 700 here coming up. But because unfortunately, the last 20 or 30 years, the jail has been kind of an oversight. When I took over as jailer, it was in a state of disrepair. I mean, there was mold, there was I mean, the living conditions, and I always look at it this way: regardless if somebody comes into jail with a cold check, or they're charged with rape, or they're charged with murder, I'm going to treat that offender the same, no matter what. And I make my staff do the same thing. But if my family member or my daughter was to get arrested, there's a certain level of care and a certain condition that I want them to be housed in, and it did not meet my standard. And so we have completely went through this facility. We have painted, we have redone showers, we have redone. I mean, and actually made it through our state jail inspections. My inspector, when he first walked in, my first inspection, he first thing he said was, "It don't stink in here anymore." I was like, "Yeah, I was like, "Yeah, we actually clean it now."
Yeah. Well, one of those posts was the first thing that caught my eye, because when you say we, I think you picked up a paintbrush.
What's
You
that?
did
Oh,
some of the paint scraping. I mean,
yeah,
it
yeah,
wasn't you telling other people what to do.
right,
It was
right.
you leading a team of jailers to get this up to par.
Absolutely. I mean, I got many times you could roll back our video where I'm sweeping and mopping our front lobby at the gym. I mean, yesterday, as a matter of fact, we had the ice storm. I went over to the road department, got our county skid steer, and I was cleaning out our front. I was cleaning out our front parking lot with it. So
Yeah.
I never want to ask staff to do something that I would not do. And even my daughters at home, we had this ice storm and stuff, and they said, "Oh, Daddy, it's a snow day. Stay home." And I know I got to go to work. And they're like, "Oh, well, you got people at work." And I just had to explain to her, because she's young, she's real young. I was like, I will not ask my employees to come into work and battle a slick road if I'm not willing to do the same. And that's the way I explain it to them. I'm a facilitator here, the way I look at it, and my job is to help mentor somebody. I'm not going to be around forever.
Mhm.
My job is to help grow the employees I got here, and so that way when I decide to hang it up, there's somebody that can take the reins over and it can run this place. I mean, that's what the goal is. I always got aggravated in my career, and I saw it happen many times where a supervisor would teach somebody just enough to do their job, but not enough to where they could jump up to the next level.
Right.
And if you do that, you're not. It's not only not fair to the employee, and some employees take offense to it, because if you're training somebody that's only done this one job for the last 10 years, and you're saying, "All right, I'm going to bring Deputy A and B in to learn your job," oh God, he's getting ready to fire me. So I did something wrong. Well, no, if you have to medical leave, or you need to take off or whatever, the jail still got to operate. So I want people cross trained. It's nothing personal.
Sure.
Yeah,
Especially in a small jail. You
yeah,
don't
it's
have
small jail.
100 people to choose from.
Yeah, right, exactly. So I mean, I got to have it to where, it'll continuously move, and we've increased our training threefold. We installed a body scanner. I also have biometric sensors in our single cells that use radar now, to where they actually monitor respiration and heart rate. So if somebody goes into a detox or a heart rate or a heart attack situation, we get an audible alarm in our booking area.
So I know a little bit about some of these, but so is that on their wrist or on the wall or?
No, it's actually in the ceiling. Matter of fact, I got one up here. I'll show it to you real quick. Hold up.
Okay.
This is my spare in case it goes down. This is actually in a protective housing, because if you get inmates in a single cell where they wouldn't destroy it, but inside of it, there's an actual radar chip in here, right? So this is mounted on the ceiling of the cell, and inside it actually monitors the chest going up and down, and it actually can sense the pulse of the inmate and
No
give them a
kidding.
heart rate. Yes. And so in my control room and inside my booking area, I have a screen, and it's green for if the inmate's good, and it's red if the inmate's bad. And if it goes orange, that means that, hey, we lost a pulse, we lost a heart rate. And
Yeah.
so, and the reason I did that, you mentioned earlier, we get people that come in all the time on all different kinds of drugs.
Mhm.
When I installed the body scanner, everybody was like, "Oh, you're never going to get contraband in that jail now. You got a body scanner." I'm like, "No." I was like, everything that we have is a tool. They've been getting contraband in jails since the 1500s,
Mhm.
and the body scanner is not going to stop it. It's a tool, and we've had 9 felony indictments out of the body scanner, which has been a great tool.
Nice.
But if we have somebody that has some fentanyl, very small amount, and it doesn't have the density for that body scanner to pick it up. And if they're strip searchable, if we go do a strip search on the person, because Kentucky is one of the only 3 states that you can't strip search everybody that walks inside the jail, believe it or not. There's actually a criteria we have to follow. So if they're strip searchable and we don't find it and it's in a body cavity, it's now in the institution.
Yep.
So and luckily, we've saved some people's lives that that's happened. But we also several months ago we had a lady in a body cavity that had 40 fentanyl laced pills. It was enough to kill 7 people that we intercepted before it made it inside the jail because of the body scanner. So it was a blessing. It was a blessing because the last thing, a lot of us, there's never headlines in a jail or prison that says, "Look what the jail did today." There was 3 people that got their GED today. That never makes late breaking news. If somebody dies, that's going to be all over the news. The last thing any of us want in this business is for somebody to die.
Sure.
I don't know a single person that's been in correction. I mean, there's some of them that give you a hard day, a hard time or a hard day. But at the end of the day, I want them to go home to their family and get the help that they need. I mean, and so that's what's a little bit different with the prisons, that we get people that come in on drugs and we got to protect them from themselves, the other population, and we got co-defendants. You may have 5 or 6 people that's arrested in a drug charge or a violent charge that we have to keep separate so they can't interfere with the case. And a lot of times once they go to prison and the case adjudicated, then that's not really too big of an issue because you've got different prisons you can go to, but they're stuck with me until their case is done.
Yeah. So what got you started in corrections? I saw that you went to college for IT.
Yeah, and it's kind of a funny story. That's what my college is actually an IT network security, and that's unfortunately it's a curse too because I'm also the IT guy for the county too. So I'm jailer slash IT person. I don't make any extra off of it, but hey, there you go. But I got into IT, and I'm sure you can tell I'm kind of a talkaholic. So computers don't really talk back to you very much. After I got out of doing college, I was like, I'm not going to stand in front of a screen 8, 9, 10 hours a day. And I always wanted to get in law enforcement. A lot of people use corrections as a stepping stone to be a police officer and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Well, I had this big dream that after I got out of college, I was going to go get in corrections. I was going to, get in top flight shape, and I was going to go to the state police or sheriff's department and all that stuff, and then the job just took a hold of me. It just took a hold of me. It became a passion. I realized that I could do everything that I wanted to do inside of a jail without having to deal with the other stuff. And I progressed. The old saying, hard work pays off. When I started Hardin County Jail, I knew no one. I didn't know the jailer ahead of time. I didn't know any of the command staff. Did not know a single employee that worked there. And so when they say hard work pays off, in 12 years I was third in command at that facility because of hard work.
Yep.
And anybody that follows your policy and procedure, do what you're supposed to do. And hey, I made plenty of mistakes. I'm not saying that I'm the perfect and I did all this great stuff throughout my career and never made a mistake. I made my mistake, but the thing about it is you don't make it twice. Yeah, yeah. And so it's been a very rewarding career. Now I've witnessed my fair share of bad things. I mean, especially in jail, we've had some suicides, and stuff like that. Unfortunately, it happened. I will say the suicides that we had in the past, all of them had a heartbeat. They wasn't in there for an extended period of time. Everybody did their job, and it showed that we did what we were supposed to do. But that's stuff that a lot of people don't realize that I still remember every one of them. I still remember every one of their faces, and that never goes away. And a lot of people don't realize that's the stuff that over a career that you're going to take with you. That's going to always be on your shoulders. You may not think about it all that often, but they're always with you, and that's always something you take with your career.
Yeah. So I know as you got into corrections, Tell me about, I always like to hear about this. What was that like when you first walked in? Did you know people in jail? Did you, family members work here?
I had nobody. I got what everybody has. A one cousin or uncle that goes to jail, hit and miss, and stuff like that. We all have those.
Sure.
But nobody was in jail. But I remember my first day like it was yesterday. Of course, it's before they give you a uniform, before you go through your training, your FTO period, and everything else. And I remember walking through the doors, and it was during court day. So Hardin County Jail has this big metal bench. I'm 21 years old, just turned 21. And I remember walking in through those two big metal doors and slamming behind me. And there's these big row of orange, inmates, on there. And not going to lie, you're a little intimidated when that happens,
Yeah.
And I was thinking there for a little bit, I was like, I may have just screwed up. I may have just screwed up. Once you go through your training and then you realize that it's just the color of the uniform. There's actually a human being still inside of that, and it's a people business. Now, there's sometimes in this line of work, it's not always rainbows and butterflies. I'll try to help somebody, but I will be the first one. My inmates know how I operate. They know I'm fair, firm, and consistent. But if you cross over the rules, I'll be the first one to get into them on. And so that is a line that that's a learned skill. And I will say the first week there, I was on pins and needles whenever I walked in that door every single time. And the first time, actually had a, physical use of force, the first time when you're doing a cell search and you find contraband, the first time that you're doing a pat down, the first time you have a medical emergency, all these little things or whatever slowly start building your experience inside of everything, but they also reprogram you a little bit to where you actually have to realize that you're dealing with people and your job is to not only protect the community that you're keeping them away from, but you actually got to take care of them too.
Yeah, yeah. There are charges. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
So now, I think before I go to the next question, I need you to explain something to a lot of people
Hmm.
because I didn't know this till a few years ago.
Right.
In most places, when you say I'm a jailer, that means that you work in a jail. In
Yeah.
Kentucky, that's the jail administrator. It's an elected position.
It's elected
So
position.
explain to me why Kentucky's different, if you know, and
Yeah,
what it takes
absolutely.
to become the jailer.
Yeah, and basically what happened was, of course, Indiana and a lot of the ones that border us, their sheriff's department runs the jail. And
Mm-hmm.
what happened, and I believe it was the third Constitution of Kentucky, they made the office of jailer and they made the office of sheriff. And the reason they split both of them is because back in those times, Kentucky was riddled with corruption.
Hmm.
So the people doing the catching was also the same people doing the holding. So
Okay.
if you were friends with the person that and money was passed under the table and all that stuff, so the mindset was at the time was we're going to split both offices. We're going to have a separate person that's elected to run this jail, a separate person that's here to be a sheriff, be the law enforcement in the
Mm-hmm.
county, and so there's two elected positions. The sheriff's department and the jail, we are completely separate. They're different budgets. We both have the same constitutional arrest power. If I want, I stay in my lane. But if I wanted to go write a speeding ticket, I could. I don't do it.
Interesting.
If I wanted to go serve a warrant, I could. I don't. I
So
stay.
can you be opposite parties?
Yes.
Can you be Republican one?
Well, matter of fact, I'm a Republican, and my friend's a sheriff, and he's a Democrat. So,
Interesting.
but yeah, so it's separate. I mean, I'm real good friends with our sheriff here in Nelson County,
Yeah.
and we're not running against each other. It's basically a different. The office of jailer is a separate box on there, for it. And there's 118 elected jailers in the state of Kentucky.
That is
And
just so interesting.
yeah, it is. And I'll tell you interesting fact. If you ever get to look at the history of jailers and also lynchings that took place in Kentucky, if you get into some of the history, there's an interesting story about a jailer that was in Owensboro, Daviess County. If anybody wants to look that up, And what happened was, I just want to paint a picture for you. Okay, this is right during the middle of you know peak of racism, the peak of really African Americans, everything they went through. And there was an African American man that was charged with, I believe it was rape or murder, and he was held in Daviess County Jail. The jailer at the time used to be a Confederate soldier. Okay, used to be, but he wasn't anymore. He got elected as jailer. Well, the town mob came to the jail to get this man out because they was going to lynch him in the street. The jailer, who was a white man, held off the town as much as he could. They actually shot and killed the jailer, ran into the jail to get the guy, and did what they did to him. And unfortunately, I mean, you just think about this: an ex-Confederate, okay, gave his life to protect an African American that he was duly sworn to protect until he had his day in court. But unfortunately, what happened? But that's actually an interesting story if you look at some of the history of the jailers in Kentucky. There's a very robust history with all of them.
That's just so fascinating. I mean, I can think of some ways why that would be so good. And then I can see, well, I've seen jail administrators and sheriffs.
Yeah.
The jail administrators appointed, and they still bump heads.
Yeah, right.
Sheriffs often don't even I won't say don't like it, but dealing with the jail is the part of their job that they normally dislike the most.
Right. And that's and there has been talks over the years, because it has been an office, every once in a while you'll get a legislator or somebody say, why don't we just all the other states just merge them together? But the sheriffs, they got their own stuff. They said, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And so, every law enforcement agency, you're going to have some disagreements and stuff. I'm very blessed. We have a really good relationship with ours, and whatnot. But none of the sheriffs want the headache, because honestly, as a sheriff, hats off to the sheriffs that run the patrol and the jails, because I mean, they got a jail administrator, but at the end of the day, whenever something goes wrong with that jail, their name goes on the bottom of that lawsuit, and they're not even there to deal with it, right? And another thing is that I'm here every day. So the people in Nelson County, if they got a family member locked up or something at the jail, matter of fact, I'm one of the few elected officials that I publicly post my phone number. Anybody in the county can call me directly at any time, and sometimes they take very good advantage of that at 11 o'clock at night sometimes. But me and the sheriff, I believe, are one of the few elected officials, and we actually leave our cell phones public. Anybody that's a citizen that we work for them. So if they need to get hold of somebody that they hired at the election box, I think it's only fair.
Interesting. So let me pick your brain again, because there's something else I saw on your posts that I didn't recognize or haven't dealt with before, and that is this fiscal court.
Fiscal court, yes.
And I have seen where you have taken checks and you're sending them back there. What is that all about?
So, and this is what I always find quite interesting, because I always ask somebody, and I may ask you what you all do in Missouri, because every state is so different on how they do things. In Kentucky, every jail has a contract with the phone service provider, because the way the state law is written is that all the phones part of the contract of allowing a certain carrier into the jail, whatever their profit is, they give part of the profit back to the fiscal court to help offset the cost of the jail. And basically, the best way to look at a fiscal court, it's basically the county's city council. That's the best way I can describe it. So you have a judge executive, which is technically the mayor of the county, and you have magistrates, which are elected, which are basically the city council members of the county. So, and basically they hold the checkbook. I present a budget, they approve my budget, and budgets in jails is just educated guesswork, because I don't know if I'm going to have a inmate with a major medical expense or something like that. But the state statute also allows us to charge a per diem rate, when somebody's housed, a booking fee when they're housed, and also allows us to take a percentage of deposits when they put money on their canteen. So that money that you see me that I'm writing checks for, let's say somebody's been in here 10 days and their parents put $100 on their books for them to buy commissary. The jail would take $10 of that. That $10 at the end of the month, depending on how much is taken and what booking fees, those are the checks that I cut back to fiscal court that in turn help operate the jail.
Okay. Okay. So it is coming back around.
Yeah, it is coming back around. Yes.
But it's not set aside just for you. If this month the road crew needs more money than the jail does, they could use that money over there.
They could use it over there. Yeah, yeah. It's shown as a income line item on the budget, but ultimately it ends up in the general fund. Is
Interesting.
where it ultimately and on our commissary account, and I know several jails have commissary accounts and whatnot. The profits from it, we have a work program. Inmates
Mhm.
get to go out and paint and pick up garbage and different trade items. I'm getting ready to start HVAC and plumbing, and
Perfect.
we had welding last year.
Yeah.
But the deputies that I have go out, I pay their salaries out of the profits from the canteen account. So it don't cost the taxpayers any money for them. The body scanner that we got, I can spend that money on inmate work programs, something that benefits the inmates or something that benefits the security of the jail. That's all I can use it for. I can't use it to go. I can't use it to go. You know, uh, you know, thing that's
Buy pizza for the staff or
yeah.
something.
I can't buy
Can't
pizza
do
for the
that.
staff with it, or
Yeah.
or throw a Christmas party with it. Right. But we, like I said, we have about 4 inmate crews that go out during the week. And matter of fact, I got 5 out today that's helping salt some of the sidewalks and stuff from our ice storm that we had. And they all like it. I mean, they're in their own work dorm. When they go out to work, I have them a really high calorie lunch that they go out with them, so they probably get an extra 1,000 calories of what we serve inside here at the jail, and we actually exceed the state requirement by about 600 calories just for our regular inmates. So yeah, but like I say, the technology has been the biggest thing, and I'll tell you, as far as you're talking about, when I walked in this jail about how in dire repair it was, I'll tell you, my first day I walked in as jailer, we had a person on suicide watch, and it was shift change.
Right.
And so I'm just using this as an example. So 7 o'clock's rolling around, and I see an employee over here doing, and this is a log,
Uh-huh.
right? Person on suicide watch, and I see this forging a log, and not only is that illegal, but that's showing me that they're not doing their job. And we basically had a big, huge training with all the staff on what to expect, and I switched everything to electronic logging. There's RFID tags on the cell door. I got a grant for all new cameras with audio.
Mhm.
And so they have to physically RFID scan and open the cell door and count a respiration of an inmate if they're sleeping to mark them during their check. And under state law in Kentucky, on our regular dorms, it's 1 check an hour. If somebody's on suicide watch, it's every 20 minutes, or medical watch, it's every 20 minutes. So now they can't, there's no way for them to forge a log. It's all electronic. And that was very troubling to me taking over as a jailer to see that, because if that's been happening, then guess what? It's been happening for a long time.
Unfortunately, there is a portion of our staff that do stuff like that. I
Right,
remember
exactly.
when I made lieutenant, I got access to the camera systems. And at the time where I worked, the camera systems would show if there was movement on the camera. You could see this little deal. So the other lieutenant's teaching me how to use this, and we pull up a housing unit, and it's flatlined for 6 hours. And I'm like, well, what caused that? And so we go back through the cameras, and up until that point, because I'd never done it myself, never seen anybody do it, you
Right.
couldn't tell me that there were people who skipped counts. I didn't know that, and it just blew me away. It broke my heart, is what it did.
It does. It's a hit in the chest because until you remember those suicides and stuff I was telling you about before, or any incident that you have in this field, if you stay in it long enough, you're eventually going to have to do a deposition in your time. I've done several. They're never pleasant. And until you actually are getting drilled by an attorney for about 3 hours on what you did and didn't do, and one of the cases when you wasn't even there, and,
Yeah.
and you're getting drilled about what your staff does, until you're in that seat, sometimes the importance and the severity of somebody's actions does not register with them. And I can tell it to them 1,000 times. We've had meetings with staff where I'm like, your all's documentation and your checks and your follow-ups and everything, and the way you treat inmates and stuff. Like, when you first start out in this field, you get some officers that are really cocky and, and whatnot, and you try to tone them down a little bit, because 9 times out of 10, I can walk and talk to somebody, and it may take 5 minutes, but without me even laying a finger, I can get what we need accomplished done.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can't. I mean, sometimes you have to go to that next level. And I tell my staff, if we have to go to that next level, our policy allows that, and we do it. But if I can talk somebody down and save a page and a half on the incident report, I'm all for it. Absolutely.
Yeah. So you're talking about staff, and another thing that I see, I've got several of these posts where you highlight your staff. You
Yeah.
talk about the good things they're doing. It's not just uh, the only coverage we normally get is when something goes wrong.
Right.
You
Exactly.
can keep 1,000 inmates inside the walls. One gets out, and all of a sudden it's in the media.
Yeah. Right.
You can save a dozen inmates from suicide, but if one dies, it's in the media. So
Yeah.
it's so important, and I love what you do. So talk to me about how you build up staff and how your leadership style.
Well, my leadership style is number one is that I have an open door. I tell all staff can come, and they don't have to. I encourage them to use their chain of command, but they know that they can sidestep it if they need to come talk to me over something. Now, sometimes if they come in and it's something that needs to go through the chain of command, I will redirect them where they need to go. But I think the leadership style is that I've told them, if you follow the policy and procedure and do what you're trained to do or whatever, I think they see that I have their back on things. I think number one is your staff has to have trust in you. Now, I've had to let people go, but every person that I've let go have known what they've done wrong, and I'm not a person to just walk in one day and say, "Oh, well, you're 5 minutes late. You're gone. I don't need you anymore." I try to bring them in. I try to coach people, try to correct it, and plus getting training. This year we actually the jail never had this. We actually did a Deputy of the Year award, a Rookie of the Year award, a Life Saving award, and we did a Christmas party for all the staff with food and everything else, and some giveaways and whatnot. The jail never really had. I think it had a few things like that in the past. At Christmas time, I try to give them extra stuff. And another thing I did too, when I took over as jailer, you're going to find this is crazy because I thought it was crazy too. How many days a week do you think the full time worked before they had a day off? I'm going to see if you can guess.
But how many
Their
days a week?
normal schedule. Their normal schedule. Like, let's say I hired you as full time at Nelson County Correctional Center. How many days would you expect to work before you had a day?
5.
7. They were working 7 on, 2 off every other weekend, and I was like, how can you? I mean, that's just so. We switched to a 10-hour shift. They now have 3 days off. And so they have more time home with their family. That was one thing that we did, and I let them put in input. I say I may not take every word, but I think people having the confidence where they can. Because here's the thing: complacency is evil. Okay, I'm guilty of it myself. I may have been doing something the last 18 years. Somebody may come along and say, "Why are you doing it this way?" and make a suggestion, and I'm like, "That's a good idea. I never thought about that." And having that ear open and never acting like you're better than somebody else. I tell you, I treat our inmates and our staff like they are human beings. I compliment, and one of my good friends who's also a trainer as well. You may know him, Jeff Carter.
I know that.
Name Jeff Carter. He does a lot of training in Kentucky. And one thing that he said that's always resonated me on leadership is that a good leader, you're going to know if your staff member's married, what their kids' names are, what their wife's name is. It doesn't mean you have to know every personal detail about them, but if you don't know the people that's in your facility on a level like that or whatever, then you really don't know who's working for you. You know what I mean? And so I really think a respect thing goes a long way. A respect. I really feel like that they feel like they're getting more invested into them. Like, when I took over as jailer, there wasn't a single deputy firearm certified. Okay, yeah. So we're all sworn peace officers, and we had. I'll tell you how I figured this out. If you want another funny story to add to the podcast, I'm at my first month in. All right, so I have a person that's charged with attempted murder on a police officer, and this individual decided to pour Tylenol and decided to take a bunch of them that he was cheating, and he was able to get passed on that. And so he ended up taking a bunch of them. So he had to get sent to the hospital to get his stomach pumped, right? So I'm at home when this happens. So they call me. So I start heading up to the hospital, and I'm saying, all right, be sure it's an armed deputy, it's firearm certified. And then my staff's like, what's that? Nobody here is certified with the firearm. I was like, so we're taking somebody to the hospital that's charged with attempted murder on a police officer, and the jailer is the only one that's firearm certified. So the training has been a big thing. Firearms, use of force, restraint care and stuff. They never had any training with it. They did the bare state minimum training here, but we are now doing training all the time. And I feel like when staff gets involved, they feel like they're being invested in. They feel like that, all right, they actually care about me, that they're wanting me to succeed. And I paid trainers to come in from all over the state of Kentucky to sit down with the staff to do it. And I really think if you show that effort with your staff, it really goes a long way, because the training that they had before was a little online training. They could have been doing their dishes and not even listening to what it says. But if you have a person sitting in a seat that's listening to somebody talk, you know that they're getting the material. And that's the way I look at it.
So what I'm hearing here is a combination of many things that all get to one deal. One, you're listening to your staff, you're letting them have input. You're making them more successful and giving them skills so that they can succeed in whatever they decide to do. This is a staff member that's going to stay around. And where I'm going with this is I saw where you'd posted the circuit court, the jailer's report, and I got to looking at that, and you are 100% staff.
Yes, 100% staff.
That right there says a lot. And now that I'm talking to you, now that I'm hearing some of this stuff you're talking about, I understand why you're 100% staff.
Yeah,
Because
right. It's
they can tell that you care.
right, and they know, at the end of the day, I still have to be their boss, but they know at the end of the day, whatever happens, they're going to get a fair shake. And I always tell them I'm not perfect. You know what I mean? I mean, I've had to suspend employees, I've had to let people go, but it's never a first time ordeal. It's always, I bring them in here and I try to talk to them. I'm like, I was like, I tried to explain to them. I was like, if you was to go work down at the factory down the road, they're still not going to allow you to be late for work. I mean, I was like, there has to be and I guess the best way it was hard the first 6 months because the tail was wagging the dog here. Unfortunately, yeah, staff was coming in whenever they wanted to, leaving whenever they wanted to. Writing, I mean, incident reports were not getting done.
There was a culture.
Yeah, and it was a culture, and so it's been a lot of work, a lot of sleepless nights. I'm not going to lie, but I'm a religious person, and part of it to me is that God always says to help your most vulnerable and stuff like that. So I think it's a very honorable profession that we do, is
Sure.
because most of the people that's in jail are ones that society has cast out. And there's some people inside this jail that do not need to get out of it. I have about 20 or 25 of them. They need to go to prison for the rest of their life. And as soon as they get out, they're going to hurt somebody. They don't need to get out. But I also have a lot of other people that are in here for drugs and have a substance abuse problem that need treatment, that are actually good people once they get sobered up. Those are the people that I try to reach with these programs. The ones that are violent offenders and stuff like that, I I can't change evil. I can't, I
Yeah.
can't change evil. The ones that have raped somebody and done stuff like that, I can't. And even statistics have shown you can't change that behavior. Their chances of reoffending is very high. But if I got somebody that is a real good person, a hard worker, and they want to go through some of the programs that we have here, I will try to get them a job when they get out. I will try to get them housing. We had a guy that went through our program, was a state inmate here, because we hold state prisoners here too.
Okay.
They want to go out and work, so we hold state and county. And his family was up in Cincinnati. That's where he was from, and he just ended up being down here. And so he had no way of getting home. So remember the commissary account I was telling you about? You can use it for the benefit of the inmate. So guess what? I bought him a bus ticket and drove him all the way to Louisville, so that way he could get on a bus and get to his family in Cincinnati for New Year's. But it's little stuff you do like that to people.
That's not little stuff. When you're an
Yeah.
inmate sitting in prison and you see that kind of stuff, that's huge. They may have never had anybody take the time. When they're sitting in jail and they see staff taking time to get the mold out of the shower and put fresh paint on there, because that's where they have to take a shower every day.
Right.
When they see you guys, I saw dorm 2, I think, where you guys are doing a bunch of cleaning up the beds and the walls and all that stuff. That's huge to those inmates. And
Yes.
jail, as well as prison, people talk about it in prison, but jail runs on respect also.
Absolutely.
And I know that just from what I see, they feel the respect there.
Yeah, and I'm probably one of the few jails too. It used to be, and you probably remember this. I know you do, and several jails probably still do this. I'm sure whoever watches this will know. The paper inmate request and grievances, right? Of course, all of ours are electronic now. So you know, you never get the, you never have to worry about, well, he wrote a grievance on me.
Yeah.
Didn't make it to the box, right? So you don't have to worry about that, which that builds confidence with inmates too. But they also have a box on there where they can select jail, and it goes straight to my laptop in here. And if they have a legitimate concern that the grievance process is not addressed, an inmate request process is not addressed, they can write me directly.
Yeah.
They can bypass the staff completely and write me directly. Now, sometimes I'm really good at checking emails, so sometimes they'll be like, "Hey, when's my next court date?" And I'll be like, "Use a regular request and be patient, please." Because I'm not going to do that. But you would be surprised on how much that cuts down on litigation, because I can catch something before it turns into a civil rights issue. I can catch something before it turns into maybe an inmate and deputy conflict, an inmate on inmate conflict.
Yeah.
And having that open door and having that flow of communication, my jail inspector, I think, said it. And again, I'm not trying to brag. There's a lot of jails and a lot of prisons that do probably a better job than I do. I'm not saying that we're like a gold standard by any means, and I hope nobody takes it as that way.
Sure.
But one thing that my jail inspector, I never really paid attention to it as much. When he comes down, we have 2 jail inspections a year. And one of them is planned, and one of them's a pop. He just randomly shows up, like, "Hey, we're going to do a jail inspection." But one thing he brought up that I never really thought about was, after we were done doing the rounds, and we go inside every single dorm, he asked every inmate, "Hey, are you being treated fairly? Is anything going on?" and stuff like that. And I tell the inmates too, because I'm with you. I'm like, "Guys, this is a no judgment zone. If something's wrong in here, I want you to tell him straight up what's wrong." I tell every inmate, do not pretend like I'm not here. I want you to be vocal. And he said, after he got done, he's like, out of all those inmates, we only had one complaint. He's like, but a lot of times whenever I get walked around, the inmates will huddle around the jailer asking 1,000 questions because they've never seen him, and they'll want to know questions about when they're going to work. And he said, none of the inmates did that to you when you walked around. And I was like, that's because I'm available.
Yep. Yep.
And so
a good lesson.
That helps out a lot.
Yeah. It's such a good lesson. If you go back in the 70s and 80s, the big riots that happened across the country.
Absolutely.
Atlanta,
Yes.
The end of the day, it was about not feeling heard. They couldn't get their grievances heard. Nobody was listening. And you're absolutely right to the point. I've seen this so much in my career, especially, and I'll say in prisons, sometimes we're overstaffed up top. Okay.
Oh yeah, right. Yes. No,
we need more at the bottom, fewer at the top.
Yeah, right.
But you see these people who make that 1 hour after their lunch on Wednesday. They walk through the housing unit, the deputy or the warden or whoever it is, could be the captain or a psychologist, and they don't ever stop. They just walk through so that they can be seen on camera. And you're right. When they get the chance, those inmates are just blah. because they haven't talked to them in forever.
Right.
And you do see that if you're into security and you walk around an institution, you will see the inmates who feel like they're heard, who have access to staff,
Yeah.
who
And
staff
that's a big
listens.
thing is following up. I always tell staff, don't be scared to say no.
Mm-hmm.
But also, if you say you're going to do something, by the end of your shift, if you say you're going to do X, Y, and Z, X, Y, and Z better be done. Because only thing you got your word and respect in here, and once you lose that, it's done.
It's
And
done.
it's very, very hard to get back. And it's a two-way road. Inmates got to give it to receive it as well. I mean, it's a two-way road. But I've had people, on both sides of the spectrum. Some people have went and said, where I'm trying to offer programs and stuff, and they're like, well, you're too soft on them. Feed them bread and water. Heck, chain them to a wall. Do whatever. Take them out. Why don't they cane them like they do in Singapore and stuff? And my thing is, there's several different answers to that. Number one, treat others the way you want to be treated. I'm not a judge. I'm not a judge nor a jury. My job by statute is to make sure their constitutional rights are met and that they get fair access to the court. And I'm not allowed to judge them, but just by my law, I'm not allowed to judge them at all. And so that's number one. Number two, why would I not try to help somebody if I'm in a position to help somebody? And number three is that it's not always rainbows and butterflies. I do post a lot of positive stuff or whatever, but there's times when I'm sure you'll see me if I'm in the back and somebody's yelling or whatever, I'll jump right in the mix and set them straight too. So I mean, it's not always like that. I mean, there's times when you have to jump in and take over a situation, but a little kindness never really hurt anybody.
No, it doesn't. And I've been around long enough and in enough places that I've seen the inmates who were treated like that, who were treated the way you're talking about that some of those
Mm-hmm.
people wanted. And one thing that people don't understand when it comes to security, if you've got an inmate that has nothing, he also has nothing to lose.
Absolutely.
And they're unmanageable.
Right.
So it's so much easier, and people don't like this sometimes, but you've heard me talk about it on the podcast before. It is so much easier to lead inmates as a leader, to have influence with them, than it
Mm-hmm.
is to walk in there and try to. You're not, once you get them down and they have nothing, you can't do anything with it.
Yeah. And just your regular officer and deputy, I'll ask them or whatever. I ask them most time two questions. I'm like, number one, as soon as we walk into the jail, are we using force on the inmates that's in here today? And they're like, no, we're all right here. I was like, yes, you are. You're keeping them in here. That's a use of force, keeping them inside this building. I was like, number two, I tell them, whenever you're actually interacting and dealing with these inmates that we're talking with, um, don't ever think that you got cameras above you and everything else. Always pretend like that these cameras in these ceilings are broadcasting out to CNN and Fox News at all times. And I was like, if you have that mindset, then you are going to do what you're supposed to do, you know. And because the cameras are there to protect you just as much as they are anybody else. Those cameras have saved, I don't know. I remember when we first put cameras in Hardin County Jail, the deputies were like, oh man, cameras everywhere. But guess what? You don't know how many times an inmate wrote a grievance and said, well, such and such did X, Y, and Z at this time and pulled it up on camera and it never happened.
Absolutely.
And it saved. I remember when we used to have a fight or altercation before we had cameras inside the dorm. We'd have to put in inmate statements, and there's only 2 toilets in there, but all 15 of them would say was in the restroom when it happened. So
Yeah.
they didn't see nothing, right? So, but it's technology's helped out in corrections big time as well.
Yeah. So, what made you want to become jailer? How did you take that step from, hey, I'm a correctional officer, and now I'm a lieutenant, to I want to I want to be in charge of the whole jail?
Well, to tell you the truth, I had ambitions on doing it back when I first started. I've
Okay.
always been kind of goal driven. Once I decided it was kind of one of my goals, I was always like, I'm going to run for jailer one day. Well, then my kids were born, and my
Hmm.
priorities changed, and it just so happened that one of my friends who was jailer for one term here before I took over, he talked to me and he said, I'm probably not going to run again. And he's like, I know how you operate and stuff, and I really think that you would do the jail some good if you ran. And I was a hard no at first. I was like, do I want to put my family through all the political stuff that comes along with it? And, as soon as you file, if you got an R beside your name, then the D's automatically hate you. If you got a D, then the R's automatically hate you. And so I was like, do I really want to put my family through this? So I prayed a lot, talked to my wife a lot, talked to my kids a lot. I was a no. Had more people talk to me, I guess, once other people was kind of trying to figure out who was going to run. And finally, I looked at it and I was like, well, I've had enough people in the county ask me to run. Maybe it's a sign. Let's do this. And if the people decide that they want me in this position, I'll do it. Because I do have the experience to do it. And if they decide that I don't need to be in it, then I'll just go on doing what I do. And so I had a contested primary and a contested general election, and I ended up getting 70% of the vote in both. So it was very emotional for me because it was a goal. It was a goal that I honestly put on a shelf. Well, once you get your kids and stuff like that, it was a goal that, yeah, back before I got married and stuff, I was like, I'm going to do this, this, and this. And then once your kids and your family and everything start coming into play, you kind of be like, well, I need to be a dad. I need to do I want to put them through elections and politics and people saying bad stuff about their dad on the internet and all this other stuff that comes with, every time I just went on Facebook today and there was a person dogging me on there today. It was a fake Facebook account, but I mean, it's just you can't get away from it. Only thing you can do is laugh and smile and go on. Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. But I mean, at the end of the day, though, I'm blessed. I believe it's where God put me to be at. I get to help people. I know I've changed several people's lives. There's some people I can't. There's some people I can't help, but I really think that I really think I'm where I need to be at until God tells me that I need to do something else. Hopefully, you don't tell me I need to sit in front of a computer screen the rest of my life because I like talking to people. I like I like talking and working with people. So I'm very blessed. A lot of people look at this as a job. This is a career. Anybody that puts on a uniform, this can be a career that can benefit you. But you have to look out for your family life at home. I still bring stuff home with me that I shouldn't. It's an ongoing thing that you have to work on. It doesn't just go away overnight. There's traumatic stuff that you see that stays with you and stuff like that. And an ongoing thing that you have to deal with is you have to learn how to separate it and leave it at work. And I've gotten better with it. I've gotten better with it over the years. I really have gotten better with it. But far from perfect, I will say. But
We all are.
yeah, I know we all are, but somebody has to do this job, and I would much rather somebody do this job because here's the thing: all of us have done something in our life that could have got us on the other end of the spectrum, or at least locked up overnight at least once. All of us has, or there's always that one friend we could have hung out with more that would have took us down a different path. We are really
Lots of those
oh,
friends.
I got several different, but the thing about it is that all of us have always been one decision away from not being where we're at right now. And some people get into this line of work because I did do part of my job as being a lieutenant over at Hardin County was I did internal affairs too. And I had three employees that we arrested. One was for solicitation for basically telling a inmate's girlfriend, I'll get him out of jail if you take me to your apartment and I'll just let your imagination go there. And the other two were contraband related.
Yeah.
And so, unfortunately, there's people that can't say no and cross that line. And it's sad when that happens because all of us, if you're in this line of work, if you're not comfortable with saying the word no, as soon as you say yes, it could be just bringing this ink pen in. This ink pen can turn into a cell phone. It can turn into marijuana. It can turn into drugs. I mean, And unfortunately, there's people that once they got you hooked and you got a family to feed and you got a paycheck that you rely on, once they get you on the contraband hook or anything, it's best if you just brought in the ink pen and realized that you messed up, go tell your supervisor right now you can stop what you're doing. If it gets to a point where you're getting ready to bring in a knife or hand grenade, then you have definitely went too far.
Sure,
Definitely
sure.
went too far.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you said you're goal oriented. So what's some of the goals coming up for what are you trying to get done? Any big
Well,
projects you want?
yeah. Right now, I just submitted an application with the U.S. Marshals to start doing some federal housing.
Okay.
I'm trying to get federal inmates inside the jail, and then after that, we're working with the fiscal court right now to
Hmm.
hopefully build us a new facility. Our facility was built in 1987. It was originally built for 20 something beds, and it now has 102 beds. And it was added on to in 1991. Hasn't been touched since. So uh, my goal is, if I had everything the way I kind of want it, my goal would be have a new updated facility where I can do programs that the state's got. It's called like a SOAR program, where I can actually contract with the factories and people go out and work during the day. They send the
Well,
paycheck to the jail. We take part of that money to go towards child support or restitution, and then part of it goes in a savings account with them and everything else. And my goal is to try to keep the bad people away from the people in Nelson County, but the people that I can try to change and try to get them a job, housing, away from what they're doing. And here's the deal: the success rate on this is 3 or 4 out of 10. I'm not sugarcoating anybody by saying that, oh, I'm going to change the world, because I can't. But guess what? That's 3 or 4 different people that we don't have to worry about reoffending, that maybe get a chance to be with their kids and stuff. So I mean, how awesome is that?
I worked around a similar program. It's the one thing in all my years that I thought truly changed some inmates and changed their lives, because for them to be able to go to work just like a normal person, we sent them out, they went to work, they worked with everybody else, and they saved up money. And I've seen so many guys leave prison with $200. You can't do nothing with $200. Those
You
guys
can.
left those guys left prison with, maybe as much as $10,000.
Absolutely.
They could pay first and the last month's rent. They could pay their water deposit. They could buy a small car. And a lot of them on Monday morning, they got out of jail on Friday. On Monday morning, if that place thought they were a good worker, they hired them back.
Yeah.
And those were the guys who were changed forever.
Yeah. And we've also had on our county road department and our city road department the guys that go out and help with like leaf pickup and stuff with that. We've had the city hire an inmate. Once he was released,
Sure.
the county's actually hired some before too. So I mean, if they show that they work, I mean, our city and county government, like for our road departments and stuff, they're not scared to give them a chance, which I think is great,
It is.
because it used to be of course, you always run background checks on people, and a background check does paint a picture to a certain extent. Don't get me wrong, but you know, I've seen people change. People can change. I mean, sometimes they don't. But the fact of the matter is that I say give somebody a chance until they prove you otherwise. You know what? That person may be so thankful that you give them an opportunity. They may be
Mhm.
one of the best employees you ever hired.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've
Because it's
seen
not
that.
enjoyable in here. I mean, a lot of people think that, oh, well, they keep on coming back. It's enjoyable. It's like, no, because let me tell you, if you're addicted to a substance or whatever, you will burn down a church to get hold of if it meant you got your next fix of drugs. I mean
Yeah.
that's just how bad of a hold that these drugs have on people.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, it sounds like you're doing great stuff. I'm going to keep
Thank
watching
you,
you on
Michael.
LinkedIn, and maybe we'll get you back on here in a few months or a year, and see what you've got to do and where everything's going.
Well, Michael, I would greatly enjoy that, and I appreciate the videos that you all are doing. And like I say, you show a field that not very many people get to see and actually hear about. So I think it's very important that even people that don't work in corrections just actually listen to what goes on. I mean, your tax dollars pay for it. You might as well know about it.
Right. Right. Right.
Yeah.
So in the show notes, is there some contact information I can put on there, like the website for the? jail?
You can put the website. You could even put my cell number on there if you want.
Okay, we'll put it on.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll get a employee if you ever get an opening.
Yeah. You can put my email, my phone number, the whole 9 yards.
Okay, that'll be in the show notes. Thank you for stopping by today, Justin. I really appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to talking to you some more.
Well, thank you very much, Michael, and I greatly appreciate you having me today.
Hey, before we go, I'd like to take a minute to thank one of our sponsors. Omni Real-Time Locating System is a company I've been working closely with for years. I'm proud to be a part of this innovative team that's developed the best real-time locating system on the market today for your jail or prison. Omni's PREA-compliant real-time monitoring technology is the very best way to track and record your inmates' locations, their movements, their interactions throughout every square inch of your correctional facility. Imagine getting an alarm the second an escape happens, or an alert that lets you know when an inmate's heart rate drops below a set level. To learn more about Omni, go to www.omnirtls.com. That's omnirtls.com. Or you can click on today's show notes to get in the information guide. Omni Real-Time Locating System is a powerful tool specifically designed for the modern correctional professional. If you haven't done so, please take a moment to like my podcast, or better yet, hit the subscribe button so that you'll be notified when the next episode comes out. Thanks for listening, and let's be safe out there.